Today we are discussing entering and contracting. As you're aware, in the last two tutorials I have covered what is an organizational development, and in the second tutorial I have covered what is an organizational practitioner. So when we discussed the last topic, organizational practitioner, we looked at two types of organizational practitioners, internal and external, and we had also gone through their characteristics, their advantages and disadvantages. And I gave you an analogy that if you want to construct your house, you want to build your house, you will be calling some kind of consultant or a contractor. I mean, it is very highly unlikely that you will be building your house your own. So you have to rely on someone who has got expert knowledge or expert information on the topic. So when we discuss entering and contracting, the very first stage was what is an organizational development, and then the second stage was who will be our organizational practitioner. Either we can pick someone from the inside of the organization or we can pick someone from outside. But when we discuss organizational entering and contracting, that's the very first step. So if you remember in the last class, I had mentioned that after entering and contracting, we have got the step of diagnosis, then we have data collection, then we have feedback, then we have designing intervention, then managing change, and eventually institutionalizing change. So we have got all these stages where we try to build the organization. So starting with the very first one, entering. What happens if you're a company and you're trying to build the strategy, structure and processes of the company, you want to improve them and you want to reinforce the systems that you have. So what happens in the entering process? You contact someone called an organizational practitioner, organizational development practitioner, and he comes and decides about few things. The very first thing between organizational practitioner and client, there is one party that is the client, there's the company itself which is trying to improve itself, and the other party is OD practitioner, organizational development practitioner. The very first thing that you will be deciding is to identify the problem. So very first stage is of identifying the problem, in which you will be trying to investigate what the problem is. Is it at individual level, group level, or organizational level? So we have got three levels where we will try and identify the problem that the organization is facing. That's the very first thing that we decide in the entering stage. Then we identify the client. Of course, as I mentioned, the problem could exist at any level, individual, group, or maybe at the organizational level. So when we discuss the client, we are looking at a particular department. Is this the problem with sales? Is this the problem with marketing? Or is this the problem with any other operations of the business? So whatever is the nature of the problem and wherever it exists, we will try and identify the client here. Who are we going to improve? Is it the department of marketing, sales, or anything else? And eventually, of course, we have to define OD practitioner as well. We have to identify, are we going to pick someone from the organization, or we are going to take the help of someone from outside the organization? So of course, that's a very crucial stage where we are trying to bank on someone who has expert knowledge and who has a competency to transform your organization. So that's the pretty much point related to entering. But we come across something called contracting as well. So contracting is another part where we have to decide upon few things. So the very first thing in contracting that we have is called mutual expectation. So I put it as mutual expectation. So you have to come up with some kind of mutual expectation regarding the state of the organization. So we are in point A and we are wanting to move to point B. Now, in order to move to point B and achieve the desired outcome or desired state from the current state. So if it is the current state and we see things are wrong and we move to the intended state, okay, we move to the intended state, we have to cover a ground. We have to improve our organization. So we have to decide about the mutual expectation. Where do the clients visualize their organization in the next 5 years, 10 years? And that has to do with the strategy, with the mission, vision, and the values of the company. And then after mutually expecting something, we come up with the next step, and that is about resources and time and resources. So we also have to discuss the time and resources that will be utilized during this process of organization change. How long will it take? How much time will be spent? How much resources are required? And we also have to decide ground rules. How much access can we give to the organizational development practitioner to the company? Because when you are dealing with someone, you are entering a contract with the OD practitioner, you want to understand that your company's data, industrial design, their patent, their copyright, and other stuffs will be compromised. So you want to make sure that when you're giving access to the data of your company to someone else, be very careful how much access can you give them. So you have to decide prematurely or before you start the organization development process. You have to decide on the rules that you want to work with, because if it is too much of access, your competency of the company might be compromised. So you want to be very careful there. So these are the two steps. But when we have gone through entering and contracting, how the clients and how the OD practitioners behave, that's one such area that I want to sort of discuss. That yes, once we want to evaluate the current state of the company, we want to understand the present state of the company, that what's wrong with the company. So we want to look at OD practitioner, okay, and we want to look at the client. Now we want to understand when the client starts working with the OD practitioner, the very first thing that happens to client is that they're not feeling comfortable. They have a feeling of being exposed. So client might feel they have been exposed, because just imagine someone comes and try to construct your house, and they're walking through the house and you are sitting in your room and you feel exposed, isn't it? That's a natural feeling. So client might feel that they have been exposed and they feel vulnerable, because this is a very initial stage where they are trying to become familiar with the OD practitioner. So they will feel vulnerable with the OD practitioner, like as if we are going to be caught, we are doing something wrong, or that kind of thing. And then comes dependency. They feel dependent on the practitioner, that now we have to follow the decisions made by the OD practitioner. On the other hand, OD practitioner feel unworthy. He feels unworthy. He has a feeling of unworthiness, because why? Client might not give him or her the due respect that he or she deserves. So that's the point where they will have the feeling of unworthiness. Of course, they feel empathized. They have a feeling of empathy as well. That yes, they want to empathize with the client. And yes, apart from that, OD practitioners also feel dependent on the client, because why? It is the client that is going to be working with the vision of the OD practitioner. So of course it's a collaborative work, but OD practitioner is somehow dependent on the client as well, because if client doesn't work, OD practitioner will fail. Now, apart from understanding that yes, there will be dependency on the client by the OD practitioner, what else can we think of? So OD practitioner might over-identify with the client. They might over-identify with the problems of the client, and they might set some unrealistic goals and targets or the deadlines. They might try to meet some unreasonable deadlines, and that's where the effectiveness and the efficiency of the OD practitioner might be compromised. So you want to be very real. You want to understand the gravity of the problem, the nature of the problem that the client is facing, and give a very realistic target or the goal. So you have to set the deadlines that are realistic, in which you can achieve what you are trying to do. So we understand in entering and contracting, we identify the problem, we identify the client, we identify the OD practitioner. In contracting, of course, we mutually agree upon some kind of expectation. We decide about time and resources. and we also designed about the ground rules. And during this process, when it is initiated, client is having a natural feeling of feeling exposed, vulnerable, and dependent. On the other hand, OD practitioner feels unworthy, empathize, and they try and empathize with the client, and they look for the empathy from the client as well as if he is doing something. They are also dependent on them, and if they over identify with the problems of the client and set some unreasonable and unrealistic deadlines, that could be a problem for both the parties. I mean, that's the thing that we have discussed in this topic. There are interpersonal issues that both the parties will face, and they will come up with some kind of proposal. A business proposal will be provided by the OD practitioner to resolve the problems of the client, and that proposal will have different elements about identifying the problem, setting the goals, and coming up with the intervention techniques. So yeah, this is all what we have to discuss in entering and contracting. So if you are a entrepreneur, or you are running a company, you are an OD practitioner, you must understand this process. There are many psychological and emotional issues related. Why? Because when we engage into interpersonal communication, there are different barriers that can come, so you have to deal with them. So you have to navigate through a very difficult situation here. However, according to different social scientists, you can be successful in this attempt of transforming the organization, but majority of the time you fail. Is the ultimate test of your leadership. So that's all for today. Please do like and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you with the next tutorial.